सूर्य मैम को फोन कर दीजिए जरा। Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 1st of March Roznama, the daily newspaper analysis. Now, yesterday, Iran was undertaken under a strike by airstrikes by Israel and USA. And as of now, till the newspapers were published, we did not get any updated information. But we do know that the supreme leader of Iran has been killed in one of the preemptive airstrikes that were undertaken by US and Israel, all right, and which will naturally, we'll get the information in tomorrow's newspaper. And also, Iran has chosen the next Ayatollah or the supreme leader of Iran, which is going to succeed the present late Ayatollah Khamenei, all right. So the next one is his son, and his name is Mojtaba Khamenei, all right. So today's newspaper is mostly centered around Israel-Iran war, all the airstrikes that have been undertaken by US and Israel on Iran. Then we have editorials today which talk about one major one in the Hindu actually that give us a good detailed insight into the relations between Iran and Israel since 1977-79, when the entire upheaval, the previous upheaval in Iran took place, which resulted in the ousting of the previous Shah regime and coming in or installation of the Ayatollah regime in Iran, all right. Other than that, we also yesterday, 28th of February, saw the incoming of 9, now we were informed of 8, but 9 new cheetahs from Botswana, they have come into India, and now we have a good significant total of 48 cheetahs in India. And then obviously we have certain other small pieces of news that we look into, okay. The first one, US-Israel, they launched strikes on Iran. Now, in today's newspaper, we don't find the name of operations that they have used, but do keep in mind the name of operations that of the airstrikes that have been undertaken by Iran and USA. And together, although they have not clearly named operations, but we have clearly in the sense that which country has undertaken which operation, but we have certain operations like Operation Epic Fury, Operation Epic Fury, Operation Roaring Lion, and Operation Shield of Judah. All right. So these are the names of 3 major operations that have come up in this preemptive airstrike that have been undertaken by US and Israel. All right. A little backdrop into it. Iran and US had good relations from 1954 till 1979 under the Shah Pahlavi regime. Then the people of Iran, they rose under Ayatollah Khomeini back then, Ayatollah Khomeini, and they ousted the Shah regime, calling it a very corrupt regime, a very pro-Western regime, a regime which is bringing in too much of secularization, too much of westernization in an Islamic country. And they established the Islamic Republic of Iran in 1979 through the Iranian Revolution. Since that revolution, relations between Iran and USA went downhill. And other than that, USA, who's always had good relations and basically is this one major supporter of Israel in the West, in actually the entire world. And it is this country, USA, which is actually has enabled Israel to sustain its entire stronghold on the land of Israel since 1948. Okay. So the relations between Iran and USA became strained. So natural relations between Israel and Iran also became strained. All right. Then eventually it was seen that Iran started developing its nuclear facilities, started enriching its nuclear program, which Israel and US basically saw that Iran is trying to develop nuclear weapons, trying to develop nuclear arsenals, and there were continuous bombardments of Iran's nuclear facilities, Then, and also signing of major deals like the JCPOA, which limited Iran to keep its nuclear armaments and weapons to a base, not armaments, weapons, so actually were not allowed to Iran, but under the JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Program of Action, plan of action, it was ensured that Iran could not undertake enrichment of uranium beyond a very meager percentage of 3.67%. Why? Because Iran is a good, powerful country in the West Asian region, and Israel always feared that Iran is going to develop its nuclear arsenals and then undertake bombing of Israel. And also eventually it was seen that Iran started supporting anti-Israel groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, etc., which was again seen as going anti-Israel and not securing peace in the region. So Israel had always portrayed this picture that Iran is developing nuclear facilities, nuclear armaments, nuclear weapons, which Iran had continuously denied. Iran never agreed to this fact, and Iran had always said things like that it is only enriching uranium or harnessing nuclear energy for peaceful purposes and never for war or weaponization. But then naturally, Iran, US and Israel, they never gave any recognition to such claims by Iran. And since last year, June 2025, when Israel and US had undertaken the 12-day war against Iran, relations between Iran and these two countries were extremely strained, and which has now come to the forefront with concerted attacks on Iran and now also ousting and eventually killing the leader of Iran. All right. The people in Iran were naturally protesting against Khamenei, and they wanted him removed and reinstallation of the Shah monarchy, and if not the Shah monarchy, but at least a Republican democratic form of government, which gives major recognition to fundamental rights, to basic human rights in Iran. Okay, so that was the backdrop of it, and US supported the protesters, and he was also in support of bringing back the Shah monarchy in Iran, naturally to have better relations with US and also to enable US to harness the rich resources of Iran. Okay, so this is all that gives you different pieces of news from the Middle Eastern region, from Iran, and various strikes that have been undertaken by Israel and US. Okay, so this particular article gives us gives you a good detail into how from 2003 in 2003 Saddam Hussein was the Saddam Hussein government was toppled in Iraq, and since then there was straining of relations with Iran as well, and then more straining of relations with Iran as well. And now finally, the government, I think so, has been successful in rooting out the Khamenei government as well. All right, so US has now, and after the removal of Saddam Hussein in Iraq, relations between Iraq and US have somehow stabilized, and they're not as rigid and stringent as it was back in 2003. Now we are still awaiting now what is going to happen with Iran and USA. All right. One thing, do keep in mind that when it comes to USA's diplomatic stances or USA's geopolitics in the world, US is very hypocritical. Hypocritical in the sense that US will have good relations with different countries so long as these countries, they always abide by everything that the US wants them to do. This entire strike against a sovereign country meaning an independent country which has all rights to run its own government as and how it wishes to. If there were protests inside or within Iran, then naturally it is something that the Iranian government is going to deal with. It is not USA's liability to enter into the internal affairs of any other sovereign country, which US has clearly done here. There have been political upheavals in our neighbors also. If we see, there were political upheavals in Myanmar, political upheavals in Bangladesh, recently concluded with elections, political upheavals in Nepal. US did not intervene in any of them. Why? Because US has no vested interest in these countries, because apparently these countries are not resource-rich countries. Iran, on the other hand, massive reserves of oil and also now other sources of energies, critical minerals, which is naturally very, very important to the United States of America. Another example, Just recently, when US took over Venezuela, Venezuela is considered to have the highest oil reserves in the world. So wherever Donald Trump or the previous presidents of USA have intervened, they have only intervened for their own personal vested interests and not for the people of that respective country who are suffering and who are still suffering. Okay. So keep this idea in mind when you go into reading all these things. All right. Okay. We have the right to self-defense. We'll use all options, says Iranian envoy. So Iranian envoy, he was Iran's ambassador in India, and he had given this entire speech basically before yesterday's events took place. All right. So recently also in the previous daily newspapers analysis have been covering it for you all that Iran and US are trying to strike a pact, were trying to strike a pact. And Iran had very openly said things like Iran is not going to stoop down under pressure. Iran is not going to submit to into absolute surrender just because US wants it to do so. All right. So aligning with that, naturally it's a sovereign country. It has absolutely every right to run its foreign policy, geopolitical policy as and how the country wants. Okay. All right. Then this article basically gives us an idea as to previously also it was highlighted that this particular state, the Strait of Hormuz, which is actually one of the most important choke points of the world when it comes to oil trade. Now, till now, Iran had significant control over it, and Iran was just to put in more pressure on the global oil supply chains, had talked about putting a ban on the Strait of Hormuz or not permitting oil trade, export, import from this particular region. Now, because of this war, that we've obviously seen so many instances that the air flights have been cancelled. A lot of Indians have been stuck in West Asian countries. So now that the war has actually taken place, naturally, no more of trade as of now is going to take place very easily. Trade in the sense, no movement of ships, etc., which is naturally going to impact the energy requirements of the world. And India is also going to be one of those countries where this oil trade, halting of oil trade is going to impact. Why? Because we are still in the transitioning sphere. We have not very transitioned into harnessing renewable energy sources to meet all our energy requirement needs. All right. So we still are dependent on burning of fossil fuels, and also in India the population is very, very large, and although we do have oil reserves in terms of big boy oil field, Mumbai high and everything, it still falls short to meet our domestic requirements, due to which we have to import large quantities of oil from West Asian countries. And if as of now there is any stoppage or blocking of oil, then naturally oil prices are going to rise. And this article, this paragraph here, it basically shows you that India imports around 2 million barrels of oil annually. And even if there is $1 increase in the prices of oil per barrel, then India is going to face an adequate enough loss of $2 billion. Okay. So again, a good article gives you an insight into the oil geopolitics of the world. All right. Then India, as India always has a stance here, also India has had the same stance. India has said that every country must respect each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty, and always come to terms and always settle their tensions and disputes through diplomacy, dialogue, diplomacy, and war should never be something that should be resorted to. The same thing India has done here also. Okay. Then yesterday, when these strikes had actually begun, so there was one of the instances where it was seen that one of the drones and missiles and everything that was actually being undertaken by Israel and US, it struck a school building, which resulted in killing of 40 schoolgirls, other totaling to 85. All right. Initially it was 40. Now with all of the other countings, it is now considered to be 40. Okay. So 85. All right. So naturally, this is something that should not take place. And then there were questions on this, where Donald Trump came out and he actually said things like, gave a statement like that whenever there is a war, a large number of people lose their lives, but that is what happens in a war. So everybody must come to terms with this. particular thing. Okay, so naturally, very, very hypocritical of him. Okay, then another piece of current affair is that the Prime Minister has inaugurated the country's first semiconductor plant at Sanad in Gujarat. Okay, so India is now trying to up its game in terms of semiconductor. That has been undertaken under the India AI mission, and then naturally we recently concluded the AI Impact Summit. So now is actually wanting to be part of the global supply chain in terms of semiconductors. Semiconductors are very critical and very important, specifically for today's world where everybody is transitioning to renewable sources of energy. So they form a key component in solar panels, in windmills, in harnessing tidal energies, etc. Okay. All right. Then Ranji Trophy final match took place yesterday, and Jammu and Kashmir won the Ranji Trophy, and it was for the first time that Jammu and Kashmir has won the Ranji Trophy. Now, what is the Ranji Trophy? In yesterday's top 5 that was posted on the Roznama, we did give you one entire slide on the Ranji Trophy. So make sure you go back to it, read it to get additional information. But just briefing you upon, the Ranji Trophy was originally known as Cricket Championship of India. Cricket Championship of India, and it was established in the year 1934 and 35. Then eventually it was renamed as Ranji Trophy after the name of Ranjit Singh Ji. Okay, Ranjit Singh Ji, and he was the princely ruler of Navanagar, and he was the first Indian to play international cricket. It was on his name that they've renamed the Ranji Trophy, and Jammu and Kashmir has become the first state, has first time won the Ranji Trophy. And this particular Ranji Trophy the match was held in Karnataka and Hubli, and Karnataka was the opposite team that was a part or that was playing the game. And Omar Abdullah, the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, has announced a total cash prize of 2 crores of rupees for the team. Okay, so Omar Abdullah, he's announced a total of 2 crore of rupees cash reward, government jobs for the team after Jammu and Kashmir won the Ranji Trophy. Okay, then 2 days before, the HPV vaccination was announced that the government is going to undertake a drive against cervical cancer, where they are going to vaccinate girls of age 14 years, because that is basically the time when the girls hit the puberty stage, and later this particular virus, this actually develops when the girls they hit 18 to 19 years of age. So HPV vaccination drives has been begun, and it was launched by the Prime Minister only from Ajmer in Rajasthan. HPV, the full form is very, very important. Human papilloma virus. Okay, human papilloma virus. The injection, according to officials, a single dose Gardasil 4 vaccine. Okay, do keep in mind Gardasil 4 vaccine, which is a quadrivalent HPV vaccine. That is, it fights against 4 different types of HPV virus, which is HPV type 16 and 18 and 6 and 11. Okay, HPV is the basic virus that results in cervical cancer in women. Okay, so do go through it, do keep it in mind. Then the same article, this news has been repeated in the Hindu as well, where the government has launched the Micron 80 MP plant in Sanad, which is for the development of semiconductors. So Sanad naam is important in Gujarat, and under what program has the government undertaken this? The government has undertaken under the rare disease, under the AI mission, and also under the semiconductor mission of the country. Okay. All right, then this is just a repetition of the news from yesterday, that Botswana's cheetahs, they finally reached Puno, and we have 9 more cheetahs, and now our total cheetah stands at 48. Okay, another article in the Hindu. All right, then yesterday it was in news that Anthropic and its CEO had basically denied that the government's the US government had asked Anthropic to make its entire system and technology in such a manner that it would let the government access data of a large number of people, which Anthropic CEO had said that they will not do so. We will challenge any supply chain risk designation in the court. All right. So again, go through it. It is a fairly fine one. Just keep in mind the name of the organizations, okay, which harness this artificial intelligence and over whom Trump has actually talked about all of these things. Then coming to the next one, Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, is in India for a 4-day visit, and there have been certain negotiations that have taken place, but then we will still wait for the formal on-paper framework to consider that it is actually a final pact that has been undertaken. Okay, but the two leaders, they've talked about to double their bilateral trade by 2030. Then also, Mark Carney basically says that he had invited our Prime Minister to the G7 summit in Finanskis in Canada last year, and then in G20 summit that took place last year in Johannesburg in South Africa, Prime Minister Modi and Mark Carney together, they had launched a landmark partnership on critical minerals with Australia. Also, this one, Canada is hoping that India can help Canada to double their grid with clean power by 2040. So as of now, these are just certain things that they've been talking about, but we are still waiting for the formal document to come out, which will naturally come when the meeting comes to an end, when his visit comes to an end. Okay. So yesterday, 28th of February, marked the National Rare Diseases Act, and under the National Rare Diseases Act, government basically this article basically highlighted that the amount of money that the government has outlined to do away with the the burden on people with rare diseases is not being spent effectively. Okay, now the National Rare Earth Disease is not celebrated on the 28th annually, but it is celebrated on the 29th of February, which is also a rare day like these rare diseases. But then 29th of February falls every 4 years. So we actually celebrate it on the 28th of February. All right. This rare earth disease, or this entire outlaying of money, is undertaken by the government under a policy known as National Policy for Rare Diseases, which was undertaken or outlined in 2021, under which the government outlined certain specific chunk of monies, respective around 50 lakh of rupees one-time sum amount to people who are suffering from rare diseases. Okay, so rare diseases are things which are, 1 in a million. Like a person gets these diseases, the rate of getting these diseases is 1 person in a million. Okay, but then these are such diseases which sometimes are either very, very expensive to get treatment for, or are incurable. Okay. Okay, then last year in the budget, it was proposed that the government had launched a National Critical Mineral Program or Mission in 2025 for a 6-year term till 2030-2031, under which the government seeks to explore around 1,200 critical minerals. So the GSI, that is the Geological Survey of India, is set to pursue 300 critical mineral exploration projects this year. Okay, so just keep in mind the National Critical Mineral Program. Okay, so it is for 6 years. Then coming to the editorials for today, mostly all the editorials are on Iran and Israel, and this one particular article is a deep dive article into the India-US trade deals. I've been taking this up for you all in detail for the past many days, to just briefing you that the Supreme Court in the United States of America, it struck down Trump's reciprocal tariffs that Trump had invoked under IEEPA Act, saying that the executive in the country is not vested with the power to put these tariffs. It is only the Congress or the parliament in the country that can put reciprocal tariffs. However, Donald Trump went out and about and invoked other acts like the Trade Act of 1974, where obviously, because the Supreme Court struck it down, so all the reciprocal tariffs that were inflicted on different countries were struck down. but he invoked another article to now impose a uniform tariff of 15% of all the countries. However, under the Trade Act of 1974, a 15% tariff a maximum of 15% tariff can be imposed, and that too only for a maximum of 150 days. So India and US had negotiated a trade deal where reciprocal tariff of 18% was inflicted on India. Now it stands at 15%, and the two countries are going to renegotiate it to bring to a formal conclusion the trade deal and tariffs on India. Okay, go through it. Then India has undertaken a memorandum of understanding with Brazil, and this memorandum of understanding again draws our attention to the National Critical Mineral Mission, and Brazil is one of those countries which has large reserves of such critical minerals which it can't harness effectively. So India has undertaken this memorandum of understanding to harness these critical minerals from Brazil and to use it in India in various renewable energy and other sectors in India. Which industry or which organization is going to do this? It is the Khanij Bidesh India Limited, which is going to do this with Brazil as well as two other countries, Argentina and Chile in South America. Okay, so do keep it in mind. Then also India became a part of Pax Silica. Brazil is not a part of Pax Silica, and just because Brazil and India have an understanding on critical minerals, it does not give Brazil the right to be a part of Pax Silica. However, harnessing of minerals from Brazil will add to India's capabilities in critical minerals. Okay. All right, then this particular article gives you an in detail insight, a deep dive into the relations between Israel and other West Asian countries, taking us to Saddam Hussein in Iraq, taking us to Iran, how Israel has always been very, very cold towards these countries who undertaken nuclear armament and nuclear development, and it is Israel who's always provided these insights to US, saying that Iran is developing its nuclear facilities, although Iran has always outrightly denied that Iran is not undertaking harnessing of nuclear energy for making nuclear weapons, but only for peaceful purposes. Israel never gives recognition to this fact, and now eventually, in spite of the United Nations Security Council also continuously highlighting that Iran is actually not undertaking nuclear enrichment for armaments, etc. No heed was paid to such reports by US and Israel, and both these countries were very adamant in removing the Ayatollah regime. Reasons for Israel removing the Ayatollah regime was simply that Iran started forming Shia nexus against Israel and started supporting anti-Israel groups like Houthis in Yemen, like Hezbollah in Syria, like in Lebanon also, and also obviously Hamas in Palestine to promote its, basically to save itself from such external shocks. Israel was very adamant on rooting out Iran and its entire Ayatollah regime. Now, because before the 1979 revolution that took place, Israel and Iran did have good relations, because the previous regime under the Shah monarchy was in support of Israel and did not wage any war or conflicting relations with Israel. Okay, so this gives you an insight into everything that I've just discussed with you all. It is a big article, but do go through it. Then coming to the news in brief and terminologies. All right, I just wanted to again flag for you all carbon border adjustment mechanism. So carbon border adjustment mechanism has always been one of the major choke points with in the trade deal with India. Why? Because India's entire production process is not very, very sustainable, and European Union, just to root it out its carbon taxation and to root out its carbon liabilities, has undertaken initiatives and has undertaken steps to naturally achieve its net zero target by 2050. And to do this, it has undertaken the carbon border adjustment mechanism taxation, under which it seeks to put in high duties on goods which are imported into the European Union, the production of which release the large amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So although India and USA, India and the European Union have signed a free trade agreement recently, have signed a new deal recently, but still there are certain such constraints in the entire import and exporting process. Okay. Then the next one is that the Rajiv Gandhi National Law University of Punjab is now to be named as the National Law University. Okay, so it has been approved that the Patiala NLU will now be known as just Patiala National Law University and no longer as Rajiv Gandhi. Okay, then I just wanted to flag for you all AAIB, that is the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, which is the main organization authority which undertakes any investigation into aircraft mishaps. All right. Also, I wanted to flag for you all the term black box, which is that particular box in the flight which records, or in the cockpit, which acts like a voice recorder. Okay. Then the government had one of the schemes known as fortification of rice. Fortification means that normal rice, they would mix certain rice with includes extra or enriched minerals like iron, etc., just to root out anemia from the people in the country. And this fortified rice, the government would want to distribute through various programs like Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. Now, there were major protests against fortification of rice by activists, and as of now, the government has also decided to suspend rice fortifications. Okay, that was all for today's newspaper analysis, and I'll see you all tomorrow with the next one. I hope it was a good session. Thank you.